You know what? I refuse to believe that I'm not the only person who knew Bruno was going to miss that penalty. And I'm not even trying to be negative. Like, for real, I'm not even trying to be negative. But as soon as Bruno stepped up to take that penalty, I knew deep down that he's not going to score. He's not going to score. He just looked completely off. And it's so weird because in the first 5 minutes, everything just was making sense. Everything was free flowing. Everything was just so magical. You're watching them playing like, man, there's just no way we're leaving this game without scoring a clean goal. And I'm pretty sure all of us, right, thought that goal would come from Mateus Cunha because he just seemed really poised to score a goal. He was just in the right places at the right time. His touches were good. He was linking up very nicely with Mount. Mount, by the way, was amazing. All right. And then, yeah, everything just sort of like, unfolded in a very weird way, so to say. Bruno was just, and look, I don't want to point fingers. And I know the title of this video is Who's at Fault, Bruno or Amorim. And we'll definitely get more into that. But I don't want to point fingers, but Bruno cost us that game. He really did. And is it on Bruno or is it on the manager? Right? Bruno, I don't know. His head just wasn't in it. He should have, that penalty should have just either been taken by Mateus Cunha or Mbeumo. All right. And I know Fernandez is our designated penalty spot taker. But as a captain, if he had this little inclination of, you know what, I'm just not in that mood. There's just something a little bit off. Maybe I'm not the right person to say. The funny thing is, I was watching the game before. I was watching Brighton Everton, and Brighton, it was just not their day. They just kept hitting the goalpost. Danny Welbeck misses at the spot kick, and even going into that penalty, I knew Danny Welbeck was going to miss that penalty because prior to that, he had a clean and clear opportunity to put it behind the net, and he didn't. And when strikers, or let me just say goal scorers, make those type of errors, you just know that this is not a once-off. This is going to be the aura that's going to be continued throughout the whole game. All right? Let's talk about the starting 11. The starting 11, in all fairness, I was happy with it. And I think everybody can say that they were happy with that starting 11. Maybe the only disappointment is that Benjamin Sesko didn't start. Right? And we sort of know why he didn't start, because Ruben Amorim wants the players to reach a certain level of fitness before he can include them in his starting 11. So it was kind of obvious that he didn't start the game, but we are expected to see him starting in the next game. But it is going to be a little bit difficult because Mason Mount is looking like a real valuable player. He's looking like a real good contender for the starting 11. And for the money that we brought in Bryan Mbeumo and Mateus Cunha, it's hard to bench those players. And Mason Mount has honestly earned his spot in that starting 11. So trying to get Benjamin Sesko into that starting 11 is seeming like a huge mountain. Not so much of a huge mountain, but it's how we're going to make it work. Because there's no way we can have Bryan Mbeumo, Mateus Cunha, Benjamin Sesko, and Bruno Fernandez in that starting 11. It can't happen. It really can't happen. So Ruben Amorim has got a difficult decision to make. But at the same time, with Benjamin Sesko, because we do need a striker, we can't play it out like the way we played it with Rasmus Højlund. Once Benjamin Sesko starts playing, he needs to deliver. He really does. Now, I know there's been some talk about, strikers being starved. Benjamin Sesko came in. He wasn't really given enough. There weren't a lot of opportunities created for him to score. All right. But let's be honest. He never came in for long. At that point in the game, morale was down. We're not really doing so much. And we also have to remember that we're not going to have the same starting 11 that we had last season, with players that just didn't put balls into the box for the striker, or were just not capable enough to do it. So I'm talking about players like Delo. I'm talking about players like Anthony. I'm talking about players like Garnacho. I'm talking about players like Marcus Rashford, right? It's either the balls in the box were poor or they're non-existent at all. Remember when I gave you guys the stats that the wingers, right, the forward players, aside from Rasmus Højlund, had more shots on goal than Rasmus himself. And he's our striker. So I don't believe Benjamin Šeško will suffer that same fate, because I do believe that he will be getting balls from Bruno, from Mateus Cunha, from Mbeumo, from Amad Diallo. Maybe less from Mateus Cunha, but definitely he is going to be getting a supply of ball into the box. And let me also not forget Dogo as well. Right? So starting 11, I was happy with it. What I was not impressed with were the substitute choices, right? I know Ahmed did not have the best of games, but players like that you keep on until the very end. Because Ahmed, he has the capability of having a spur in a moment situation, even if he's having a bad game. And that's why players like Bruno Fernandez do not get subbed off, because even though they miss penalties, even though he's going to miss a penalty during the game or misplace a pass or lose focus and get the ball taken off him, he still has that in him to create nothing, to create something out of nothing. With Amad Diallo, I just feel like he was taken off way too early. Yes, he wasn't having the best of games, but Dalot is not the solution. Right? Rather would have seen Mazraoui come in, but we also don't know, we're also not clear about the situation over there. In terms of the goalkeepers, Altay Bayinda, right? Ben mentioned that Altay has got less errors in his game than Andre Onana, and I do agree with Ben when it comes to that. But we can also agree that both of them are not really equipped to be United's number one, goalkeeper. All right, so it's really a flip of the coin, right? You start Altay, you start Onana, they're both gonna come with their problems. You understand what I mean? Yes, Altay he is prone to less errors in the box, but at the same time, he doesn't have that physicality to really deal with set pieces, and that's something that has been a thorn in our foot. Is trying to defend set pieces, and Fulham were taking full advantage of that today, which was just not good for us, right? Midfield, man, it's not working. You know what I mean? It's not working. Ben talked about, Bruno Fernandez. Yes, we do know that Bruno Fernandez, when we did bring him from Sporting, he was playing in that midfield before he was actually playing up front as a number 10. He's just a midfield player. But at the same time, it's just not working. You know what I mean? I don't know if more time needs to be given. I don't know if it's an issue of pairing. We need to find maybe a better person to pair up with Bruno in that pivot. It's not working. Like it's working in some aspects, and in some aspects it just feels very disjointed. Right? I can't. It's so hard to pinpoint the problem. Yes, we know it's the midfield, right? And we know that we need a goalkeeper, but there's just sometimes during the game where you just can't really say what the issue is, right? Because you will play well, we don't get the goal. You know what I mean? Or we're not playing very well, and you're like, oh, but this and this is happening. Bruno, by the way, just everywhere on the pitch today, man. Like, I get as a number 10, you've got that allowance to free roam, but he's not playing as a number 10. And a lot of the time, Bruno Fernandez was out of position, and he was occupying a lot of the spaces of other players. Right. So yeah, with Bruno today, I don't want to point a finger and say Bruno cost us that game, but in certain situations, a spade is a spade. He missed the penalty. As a captain, he should have had that leadership to say, you know what, I'm not feeling it today. Let me just pass on this responsibility to someone else. And let me rather let them. He should have given it even to Mateus Cunha, because Mateus Cunha really looked poised to be getting a goal today, right? Like I said, Ruben Amorim, the substitutes just didn't make sense. Because I'm not gonna lie to you, as soon as he took off Casemiro and never brought in a midfield to replace him, and instead brought in Benjamin Šeško, we already knew that Mason Mount was going to drop to the midfield and it was going to be Bruno Fernandes and Mason Mount. And we all knew that was not going to happen. And to be honest, that's where our problem started. Because after that, it was basically game over. It was Fulham's game to take. Because even when you look at the stats, which I'm looking at right now, when we started off playing, we had like lion's share of possession, we had more shots on target, everything. As soon as that midfield was gone, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that Casemiro was holding it down in the midfield. No, not at all. I don't even know what Casemiro is honestly still doing at this club. And I'm not trying to say this in a mean way, but he's on what, 350,000? And he's not one of the players that we're not looking to offload? Like, come on, guys, let's get real. Because even before he got sub off, you could already see his legs were gone. His legs were like, there was this one moment in the game, right? I wish we could do instant replays on this thing. There was this one moment in the game, and I don't know. I think there was like playing the midfield, and I think he lost the ball or something, and then Fulham were now on the counter, and you could just see he couldn't even like summon the energy to track back. And I'm like, what is this? What is it? Is that saying that leave the football before the football leaves you? That was like, impersonated, embodied in that moment in time. Like, dude, this is not it. Like, if you still want to play football, it can't be at the highest level, right? We've got all respect and adoration for what you've achieved throughout your career. But at this moment in time, you can't think that you can still do it at the top level, at the highest level, and still achieve what we're trying to get to do, right? So, yeah, that was a bummer, right? And then Fulham come, they get the equalizer, and it's just, and even before they got the equalizer, United just didn't even look like they were going to take this game. And in all fairness, when you look at the history between United versus Fulham, it has never been a high-scoring game, right? It's been 1-0 here and there, couple of draws, 2-1. In the recent fixtures, it hasn't been a high-scoring game. So when I went into this fixture, I knew that it was not going to be like a barrage of goals and stuff like that. But at the same time, when you're looking at this rejuvenated side of Manchester United, you want to believe that it's not going to be the same as in the past 5 seasons due to the type of players that we've now brought into the system. We needed the 3 points today. We really needed the 3 points today. After this fixture, it's not getting any easier. We've only managed to score 1 goal so far. And that goal was even a deflection. It wasn't even like a clean goal, matter of fact. Whereas you got teams like Arsenal who have already hit like 6 goals, City on 4, Spurs on 4, Nottingham Forest on 4 goals already. Deja vu, going back to last season, where our number one issue was scoring goals. And here we are in the new season, after all the efforts that we've made, second game, and we've only managed to bag a goal. 1 goal. And it's so funny because last season, the start of the season, I didn't want to panic. But then early during the season, I already identified the problem. And I think a lot of you guys also identified the problems that we're not scoring goals and this is going to cost us. And it cost us last season. And this season just seems to be a repeat. And I know a lot of people are going to come out and say, it's early days, it's just the second match, this and that. Guys, it's a problem. If we are talking about United are going to be competing for top 4, right, are going to be competing to go and win trophies and all this and all of that, we need to start scoring goals. We need to start getting the points. It's all well and good to play for good football. And we did that at some point, even last season. I said, it's fine. We can see the improvements. We can see the sign to play and pass better and make the runs and whatever. But at the end of the day, points count. Goals count. Second game of the season, and we're already a goal down in terms of goal difference. All right, we're already -1. We're sitting 16th on the table. If you're a United fan and you're not concerned, then look, I don't want to insult anyone, you know what I mean? But you got to at least be at some level concerned, worried. Because like I said, it doesn't get easier after this. I'm not sure who we're playing after. I think we're playing Burnley after this, if I'm not mistaken, before we play, is it Liverpool or City or whatever? But I think we got one more chance to basically salvage 3 points before we go into the next run of hard fixtures. That's the Liverpool, the Chelsea, the Arsenal, not Arsenal's, Spurs and whatever. Right? We need to get it. So even this talk of top six, that's out the window. It's out the window. This season, we needed to bring a striker. We brought Benjamin Sesko. Benjamin Sesko needs to do what we brought him here to do. Mateus Cunha and Brian Mbeumo need to do what we brought them here to do. Brian Mbeumo, beautiful corner. That's one of the reasons why we also brought him into this club. Is his set pieces, his accuracy in terms of finding players when he's whipping balls to the box, magnifico. He's doing what he needs to do. Mateus Cunha is doing what he needs to do, being a hound dog, fighting for the ball, breaking into the box, driving through the midfield. He's doing what he needs to, but all of that, there needs to be an end result. All that needs to count towards something. And it is important. Let me just show you how, or let me just tell you how how important the striker is. Let's have a look at Newcastle, right? Newcastle are having a problem with Alexander Isaac, right? Newcastle, in these 2 games that they've played, I think they've played 2 games. Let me just make sure. Newcastle, okay, they've only played 1 game, right? They've played 1 game, they've lost, they drew, Newcastle, they drew, and they haven't scored a goal. Right, and this is the same Newcastle last season that was just bagging in goals because of Alexander Isaac. Right, they are going to suffer this season, and that's why right now they're scrambling to find a replacement for Alexander Isaac, because they know that, especially with their system and how they play and whatever, it's vital for them to have a striker. And some of these teams rely on their strikers. If they do not have their strikers, it's game over. It is literally game over for them. But now look at the teams that have invested in the strikers, because that's what they needed to get themselves over the line. City already sorted. They already have Mamouche and they already have Erling Haaland. Arsenal went and got Gyökeres, scored 2 goals. Right? Chelsea have bought in João Pedro and Liam Delap. João Pedro's already added himself to the scoreboard under Chelsea. Right? And then we have Richarlison, who has just, started scoring goals for Spurs. And they've got Brennan Johnson, who's not even a striker. But you can see what I'm sort of saying. Chris Wood for Nottingham, right? Had a good season last season. This season, he's still bagging in goals, right? These are teams with strikers that are scoring goals. And that's why they're able to stay afloat. When you look at this top 6, it comprises of these teams that have gone out and invested in strikers, in players that can score goals. Liverpool brought in Hugo Ekitike. He scored on his debut. We brought Benjamin Sesko. He hasn't just started. We understand why he's not starting, right? I'm not here to start arguments and whatever. But once he starts, he needs to hit the ground running. Everyone needs to just understand their assignment, right? Everyone needs to be like, he's the focus man. Create, get goals. That's how you win games. That's how you move up the league. That's how you go and win titles. It's goals. You know what I'm saying? We need to start scoring. That's the problem that we're trying to address during this transfer window. Yes, and I know we still need a midfield and whatever and all of this and all of that, but we have midfield. I know it's not the pairing, but Ruben also needs to, not adapt, but he just needs to, he doesn't need to complicate it. And I think that's what Bruno and Ruben did today. They complicated this game when it didn't need complicating. Bruno needs to stop this thing of being everywhere all the time. He needs to stop this thing of, I need to be the one to make sure that this team is ticking. You understand? And I love that about him, but we understood when he did it then, but now we're actually bringing in a good group of players that can do their job, that understand the program, that are going to listen to Ruben Amorim, that are going to, they don't need that extra voice in their head all the time on the pitch coming from Bruno. Bruno needs to trust that these guys know what the fuck they're doing. And that's how we ended up losing the ball. That's exactly how Bruno ended up losing the ball in the midfield. All because he stopped and he wanted to dictate everything. He should have just played the game, kept the game flowing, and that could have cost us. So Bruno needs to simplify his game a little bit. Focus on what he does best. Be a captain. Lead by example. Trust your players. You've got Mateus Cunha. You've got Brian Mbeumo. You've got Benjamin Sesko. You've got Mason Mount, who is playing incredible, by the way. You know what I mean? And he's only going to get better throughout the season. We've got Amad Diallo. Dogu, yes, maybe you can here and there. You know what I mean? But Bruno, trust your team. Trust them. Because once they feel that trust from you, man, it's going to make one hell of a difference. That back line is sorted. De Ligt trusts his defenders. You don't see him all the time barking and commanding and pulling and whatever. He knows he's got Luke Shaw next to him. He knows Luke Shaw has been in the game. Maybe Lenny Yoro, is still young in the game, whatever, but you can see there's that trust. There's not so much of dictatorship, Come there, move there, go there. It's everything is, you understand what I mean? De Ligt has that back line in order. So in that midfield, Bruno needs to have that sort of energy as well. And then Ruben Amorim, just keep it simple. I know it's going to be difficult trying to fit all of these players into this system at the same time. So this is an unfortunate decision that you're going to have to make. I don't know how it's going to figure it out. I don't want to sit here and be like, drop him, play him. You understand? Because at this point in time, Mateus Cunha hasn't given any reason why he should be benched. Brian Mbeumo hasn't given any reason why he should be benched. Mason Mount hasn't given any reason why he should be benched. All three of them have been playing very well. Arsenal game and this game. Yes, maybe this game they fell a little bit short of their performance, but none of them have. There's no excuse why they shouldn't be in that starting 11, including our captain. So I don't know how he gets Benjamin Sesko in this team, but he needs to get him in this team. Who he drops, I don't know, but I do have a feeling it's going to be Mason Mount. And then as for the number 10 and the midfield pairing, I really don't know. I don't know. But guys, this is a real call for concern. It really is. Let's not sit back and be like, oh, let's take, the positives and just keep it smiling. Look, take the positives, but let's be real. Let's have real conversations. Let's not be delusional about things. All right. And when we have these real conversations, it's not me saying Ruben Amorim out. It's about identifying those problems early and nipping them in the bud. Not identifying the problems and saying, it's just the second game. It will sort itself out. No. No, we can't become compliant because compliancy is what got Erik ten Hag sacked. Compliancy is what made us finish 15th last season. Compliancy is what made us lose in the final, in the Europa. Right? The Europa League final. That's what being complacent does. We can't be complacent. This is the problem, fix it next game. Because I know a lot of us are relying on this whole thing of, we're not going to have a lot of fixtures this season. But remember, Champions League hasn't just started. And this is the period where we're supposed to be raking up as much points as we can, before the Champions League starts and those other teams have got more fixtures and whatever. This is where we're supposed to be collecting and then just be collecting more. We can't be playing catch up during that stage because they are also going to gain momentum. So don't think it's going to be easy for us when all the other competitions kick off and we're sitting back thinking, yeah, happy days. We're not there. They are. No, that's just going to drive them even more. That's not guarantee that because they're going to have more fixtures than us, that we're going to be safe. When we're failing to be getting the necessary points that we need to get, and then we expect that we want to be finishing the position that we want to finish in. Absolutely ridiculous, But anyway, guys, it is what it is. We look forward to the next game. I just hope for Ruben's sake, that he doesn't leave it too late. I hope he doesn't make the same mistake that previous managers have made prior to him coming into this club. of just being complacent, you know, having a little bit of some naivety, and just thinking that, oh, this thing will just fix or sort itself out without making the drastic changes that he needs to make immediately. It needs to be made immediately. And guys, again, it's not that I don't know that there's a bigger problem out there in terms of the Glazers and Ineos and getting in players, etc. and whatever. I get all of that, but I'm just saying that at this point in time, we do have a group of players that he can utilize, and I think if he just simplifies it sometimes, it could do more good for us than it harms us. And today's match was a very clear and typical example of that. But yeah, anyway, guys, that's what I need to say. Next up is, I think, Brandy. I could be wrong, but you guys know, you know what I mean. One more other thing, guys. Thank you very much. We'll hit 100 subs. We'll make damn, is this the 100 sub video? Oh man, we'll make a special 100 sub video. All right, this one doesn't count. We'll make a special 100 sub video. Thanks you guys for your support. We really appreciate it. We finally hit 100 subs. We keep it going, we keep it moving. Now we're aiming for 200. Yeah, we're aiming for 200 subs. But yeah, man. All right, guys. If you liked it, like, subscribe, leave your thoughts in the comment section down below, and yeah, catch you in the next one. Peace.